Hi, my name is Ashley Alcantara, and welcome to my prompt number 2 PowerPoint. So, upon reading the reflective practices, a means to teacher development, I was able to answer questions about reflection. So, what role does reflection play for me in my own instructional practice? So, as I've continued on my teaching journey, I've become a more reflective teacher. I've realized that there's always room for improvement. So, just like students, I'm constantly learning and growing. The article talks about how it is important as educators to reflect on past lessons, students' engagement, um, activities that you've implemented, and see how it can lead to better learning outcomes. This constant reflection ensures continuous growth for all learners and for educators alike. We are always striving for improvement because we want to best serve our students. So, how do I utilize peer experts? So, the article talks about the importance of collaboration with those peer experts. It's important to participate in things like peer observations, talking about lessons with your peers and different strategies, having group discussions to encourage some deeper analysis, as well as being open to feedback from those peers. So, in my years as a teacher, I've learned how important, absolutely crucial collaboration is with my colleagues. Um, I actively seek input from my colleagues. We spend lots of time talking about what worked, what didn't work, and making necessary changes to serve the needs of our students. And this aligns with the study's findings that peer reflection fosters confidence amongst teachers and helps teachers challenge some of their preconceived ideas about what being an effective teacher looks like. So, my prior knowledge and student experience has influenced me in my growth as a teacher, right? My experiences and the interactions that I have very heavily weigh on the instructional choices that I make. Just like in the article, it stresses upon the reflection that helps integrate some of the teacher training. So, the things that we learn in an educational setting as teachers with the application in a real world setting. So, current research helps me make decisions in my classroom. Um, Currently, what is happening with the interactions and the experiences in my classrooms with my students also allows me to be adaptable and make changes as necessary. If I can't draw on any of that prior knowledge or student experience, I seek help from research, from peer experts, from any and all sources that I can find. So, speaking of reflection, I took a moment to reflect upon my initial lesson. I focused on the standard determining main idea of a text and explain how it is supported by key details in summarization. So, I really focused on the main idea and key details. You can see by the learning objectives, I wanted students to determine what the main idea of a text is and then connect that main idea with details from the text. So, my initial lesson was completed during my summer course. I had to tutor a student. So, this original lesson was for a one-on-one instruction. So, I was very easily able to meet the needs of the learners in that environment because I had one. I was able to tailor the lesson to meet her needs directly. So, I was able to differentiate and scaffold as necessary for that one student. So during this lesson, there were some things that worked and some things that didn't. So I needed more time, right? I had limited time to work with this student. While the students' work showed that they were successful in understanding and meeting this standard, I still would have liked some more time for guided practice, some more practice to build the confidence of this student. But the thing that worked really well was utilizing a graphic organizer to help her guide her thinking and organize her thoughts. She was very actively engaged since this was a one-on-one setting. So in the initial application of this lesson, I was not required to do any integration. So I was really focused on the primary skill, the reading skill that I wanted to target, the main idea and key details. So I missed the opportunity for some of those cross-curricular connections. So after that reflection of the lesson that I taught, I was able to reteach this lesson and make some changes based on how it went. So I still focus on the same standard. This time, though, I integrated a science standard that was previously taught, discussing the technological advances that have changed space exploration. So this time, those learning objectives are still the same, determining the main idea of a text. And now I've added the individual paragraphs as well and connecting those with those key details from the text. So this time in teaching my lesson, I was able to reflect and say, what worked this time, right? What was different this time that made it successful? So this lesson was successful in very explicitly teaching students what main idea and key details is. In my previous lesson, it was more embedded in and never explicitly stated. So it differed in the fact that, of course, I was doing one-on-one previously. Now this was into my entire class, a large group of 23 students. So I had to pay closer attention to the needs of all the students in my room and adapt as I went and as necessary. As well as integrating the previously taught science skill allowed me to focus on that standard of main idea and key details by providing students with a skill, right? A new skill with a content that they were already familiar with. So throughout the lesson, I modeled how to find the main idea and key details using Think Aloud. I highlighted my text. I underlined when necessary. So I modeled the correct way to answer these questions and wrote them down. So this provided students a visual as well as the auditory explanation in order to accurately complete their guided practice. So practicing the skill of main idea and key details. The lesson itself included scaffolding for all students. It provided passage alongside the questions, and there was no need for students to be flipping back and forth. So the correlation between the student handouts and the teaching helped keep the students engaged, and the topic was relevant to all students because it was a previously taught content. So in my previous lesson, engagement was high because it was in a one-on-one setting. Engagement in my reteaching lesson varied. I had different students participate at varying levels. So as the participation opportunities increased, engagement increased as well. So students working alongside the teacher allowed for deeper understanding and retention of the content. So I was able to see upon completing the formative assessment at the end, 82% of my students showed mastery. So this is evidence that the majority of my students were engaged in the lesson. So overall, the formative assessment that I gave at the end of this lesson showed that the majority of the students were successfully able to identify the main idea of a text. So my one successful student that I focused on, she did well, and she was an active participant in the lesson. She followed along. She shared her ideas as we went. So now she's able to move on to connecting the main ideas into that second learning objective with supporting and connecting key details from the text. I did have few students that did not show mastery, so they will need explicit reteaching and explicit small group instruction. Those students that fell into this category of needing additional instruction were currently reading below grade level. So I would, of course, pull these students, look at the same skill, and implement it in a text on their instructional level. Then I can see, was the issue truly that they didn't understand the skill, or was it an accessibility issue in that the text was too difficult for them? So student B, I would also try to pick a text that was of interest to her because she had no interest in the content discussed. So the work samples that I looked at included students, again, that showed mastery and some that did not. The guidance practice was scaffolded, and we completed a lot of that guided practice together. So upon completing the formative assessment, it was a quick way for me to easily see which students got it and which didn't. So the formative assessment was multiple choice. So this allowed accessibility for students, but others didn't like the having to choose a specific answer. So in the future, when I pick a topic, I want to pick one that integrates different content areas, but also focuses on the diverse needs in my classroom. But overall, I believe the lesson went well. So you can see here is my main idea and key details lesson, the reteach video. Here are some artifacts that correlated with that lesson. So here is the article that I used with students. This is the handout that they received. So you can see how the worksheet was user-friendly, right? We have the article and the questions side by side, and we scaffolded looking at a paragraph at a time, then bringing them all together for our formative at the end. So you can see here I had student A, my student that showed mastery. That is the front and the back of her worksheet. You can see she had complete sentences. She was looking in the text along with me, whereas student B, the front and the back, you can see it was not complete sentences, so it maybe shows a lack of engagement. This was the formative assessment that I gave to students, so based on the text that we've already read together. So they were not given a new text. So this wasn't testing reading comprehension. It was truly testing that skill of, can students identify the main idea of an article? So you can see here that student A was able to show mastery and student B still needs additional support. So in the spirit of reflection, I was able to think and really reflect on my graduate school experience, which I haven't done throughout, as far as how it impacts my day-to-day learning. So it has influenced me in more ways than I thought when I would be initially entering grad school. It's kind of helped refine and shape my teaching style, my mindset towards education. It's helped reconnect me with that passion for education and remind me why I became a teacher in the first place. It particularly focused on how I approach student learning, and then some skills and some strategies in relationship to classroom management. So one of the most important lessons that I took away from my courses was the importance of setting high expectations for those students, but also recognizing and addressing any gaps and needs for those students. So for example, in upper elementary, I have an expectation that students enter my classroom knowing their multiplication facts. Often that is not the case. So I have been able to take the mindset I've learned from my courses and develop strategies to help meet the needs of those students. Another takeaway from my studies was the importance of differentiating and scaffolding for my students. Differentiation and scaffolding does not look the same for every student. So learning about more about data-driven instruction and those formative assessments has enabled me to better identify those student needs and adjust my teaching as necessary. And I'm able to do it quicker now. I've become more intentional about the activities that I use, using hands-on activities, visual aids, small group instruction to help support my students when they get it. But also I was reminded of the importance of what to do if they do, providing that extension. So of course I was able to revisit the ideas of educational philosophy, some of the theology and pedagogy that has kind of left my brain since my undergraduate, that brought it back to the forefront of my mind, and talked again about the student engagement piece that is needed to build a positive and safe classroom environment where students feel motivated and confident and in a risk-free environment. So I believe that my grad school experience helped strengthen my ability to immediately apply what I learned. So I'm taking these things in grad school and bringing them back to my colleagues and utilizing it in my own classroom. I gained insights into things like effective classroom management, getting some new tools to keep up my sleeve as I need them. And then so overall, I believe that this graduate program has positively impacted me as an educator. So it has allowed me to become a more reflective and flexible teacher. So my courses reinforced all of that foundational knowledge that I had, reminded me of some of those important foundational skills and things that I learned, while expanding and deepening my understanding about how to be a successful teacher. So I will make sure that all my students can succeed in my classroom academically, socially, and behaviorally. And here are my references. This was my reading reflection. Thank you.